Good Tavach. 10 seconds too early, but it's fine. Tashkaparain, someone just sent me a question. Where does it say the minhag of eating kasha on Shabbos Shiroh? Has it got to do with the minhag of giving grain to the birds on Erev Shabbos, on giving, well, that we're going to discuss about the minhag of giving grain to the birds on Shabbos Shiroh? And so I told him that the minhag is written in Hayom Yom, for Yud Zayin, Shabbat. It says it's a minhag to eat schwarze kasha. Where does it come from? So I have in front of me, this is just been working just now. There's a sefer called Hayom Yom HaMavur, and he shows that this is actually quite a widespread minhag. He gives a reference to Minhagech Sam Sofer, Toimer Dvoire, Perik Tes Sif Aleph Chof. I did not check it up. Now, they would also have this custom in many kehillas to eat kasha on Shabbos Shiroh because, same idea, because of the mon. Well, not the same idea, because of the mon, which is the Parsha Samon in this week's Sedra. And so the mon has a certain resemblance, I guess, in our imagination, at least, to kasha. And he gives a reference that in the Sefer Hasichas of the Frierdiker Rebbe, that kasha was seen as a bit of a delicacy, a nice food in times bygone, in 150, 200 years ago. At any rate, so that's the minhag of eating kasha on Shabbos Shiroh has got to do with the Parshas Hamon. And let's come to our list of questions, though. Right. So the question which we have here is, I was asked during the week, we have the minhag of quoting from the Maharal about giving the children seed to feed the chickens, and we don't do this minhag. So let's read this. This is from the Sefer Hasichas. So you have it in front of you. I like to learn things from the source. And so here we have a quote from the Sefer Hasichas of the previous Rebbe. The Maharal of Prague was a great Ilui. He was seen as a great genius in his time. And he was a Gaonim. He was a tremendous genius, so both in Nigla and in Ister and in philosophy. He also was a Balchush. He had a talent in Nagino, in music. A Balkishin in Ala Chochmas. He was talented in all various sciences. Balmidas Tovas, refined nature. Well, Kulam. On top of all of these, he was an educator and a guide. Was hat geheiligt und eingekritzt bei dem Klal Yisrael und Hog Yisrael. And he has established and sanctified various customs in the Jewish practice. Now, here we go, a trace of a minhag, trace generation to generation. Der Elter Zeder, der Rebbe Tzemach Tzedek. My great-grandfather Tzemach Tzedek, erzählt. Als sein Dick noch ein klein Kind hat gehört von seinen Zeden. When he was a young child, he heard from his Zeder, the Alter Rebbe. Aber wenn ist gewesen ein klein Kind, hat ihm sein älter Zeder. Now, anyone who's read the Zichronis remembers Reb Moshe of Posen. So the Alter Rebbe, at some stage, met his great-grandfather, Reb Moshe Posner. As we know, he was a very learned person. He was also a wealthy person, and etc. That sailed as sein Vaters Elter Zeder. So Reb Moshe Posner, the Alter Rebbe's Elter Zeder, says that his father's Elter Zeder, and the five generations back, who is none other than Maharal of Prague, hat gewehr given a minhag. That the Maharal, so here we have a passed down from generation to generation, that the Maharal of Prague he was the one who instituted a minhag. The Shabbos of Parshas Beshalch. He would call all the Melamed Ardiki, all the school teachers, would teach children, and all the parents, was kleine Kinder, parents of young children, they should gather together on Shabbos Shiroh auf den Schulhof, to the yard of the shul, well, I've never been to Prague, but I presume this is the yard of the Alt Neuschul. Heint, fleck the Maharal Zogen, and he would then, in front of him, in other words, he made a children's rally, and parents there also. But he said, today is Shabbos Shiroh, on the flag hasten the Malamdim, we tell the Malamdim, the teachers, that they should explain to the children the story of Kriyas Yamsuf, and wie die Feglach haben gesungen und getans beschas Moshe und allem Eden, Männer und Frauen haben gesungen die Shiur aus Yoshir. That when Moshe and the Eden were singing Oz Yoshir, the men and the women, so the birds were singing and dancing. Und die kleine Kinderlach haben gerissen Peiris von die Jambämer. So the children, the little children, plucked fruit from the trees of the sea. Now, my memory always had it that these were trees which were growing inside the tunnels, inside the Yam Suf, but that doesn't seem to fit with the record here, because they were already outside when they were singing the Shiroh. So the Yam Beimer could mean trees which are overlooking the sea. At any rate, the children plucked fruit from the trees, und gespeist die singen die Kiontanze die Gefägelach. And the children fed this fruit which they plucked to the singing and dancing of birds. The Maharal fleckt hasten geben die Kinder, kleine Kinderkasche. So this is the first thing. That the whole story, he brought the children to the central place and explained to them about the children back in the day with the Kriyas Yamsuf, how they plucked fruit and fed it to the birds who were already participating in the celebration of Kriyas Yams. Maharal fleckt hasten geben die Kinder, he would then instruct that the children should be given kashe. Zij sollen werfen van die hiner, that they should scatter the kashe to the chickens, und Fegelach and other birds, as they koren zu die Yam Peiris, was die kleine Kinderlach haben gespeist die Fegelach, in remembrance of the fruit, these sea fruit, whatever that means, which the little children fed the Fegelach of birds back by Kriyas Yams. Norden, and then the Maharal would give a brocha, he bench all the children, and also he would bench the parents, that they should be able to, that they should merit to bring up their children to Torah Chuppah and Treif. So this is a fascinating, very detailed record of a minute going back to the Maharal. Now, then we look at the Magen Avraham on the left side of your page. Yesh nohagin losei schitim b'Shabbos Shiroh lifnei ha'ifes. Now, those who have a custom to feed the birds wheat, grain. It's not right on Shabbos Shiroh. Sharei eimes enosen elecha. V'yayin bes Yosef shaloika divrei ha'olas Shabbos. So he brings that there seems to be such a meaning. Now, the Maharal is probably about 450 years ago, and the Magen Avraham was about 50 to 80 years before the Alter Rebbe. So he doesn't register this minig b'shem Maharal. He just heard, he said there is such a minig, and he has a problem because we should not be feeding on Shabbos. We should not be feeding animals which are not our personal responsibility, because that would be considered an excessive effort. So you shouldn't be feeding them. So he says you shouldn't do it. Let's read further. Now this is the quote from the Alter Rebbe. This is in the same place with the Magen Avraham in Siman Shin Chav Daled. Domestic animals or birds, you are allowed to spend the effort to feed them water or food. Domestic animals, domestic birds, they're your duty to feed, and therefore you're allowed to make the effort to provide them the food. Then he says you should not be feeding water nor food to devoid him, to if you have bees, if you've got a dovecot, which would mean you'd have an outside structure, and the doves would come and go, etc. Even not a great effort, even just to scatter in front of them is also not allowed. They're not you're not obliged to feed them. Because they manage to feed very well on their own out in the field. So here we have a difference between domestic birds and birds of the wild, that domestic birds you are allowed to feed on Shabbos, whereas birds of the wild you should not be feeding. Yesh noyagin, then the Alter Rebbe continues, and this is the Magen Avraham. Yesh noyagin l'seis chitim lifnei ha'ifes b'Shabbos Shiroh. There are those who have this custom to feed grain to the birds on Shabbos Shiroh ve'ein zena ve'ein nochen, and this is not correct. Sharei ein mezuni sehem olecha. Okay, so this is where we have here, on the one hand, we have this tradition that the Maharal did instruct to do so, and yet Lepoil, we don't do this. And here is an answer of the Rebbe. As you can see, the date is Tovshim Mem Ches, and the Rebbe, this is in the book, there's a book called Heichel Menachem, 3 volumes, and later it's now also in Shulchan Menachem. It looks like there was a discussion, I didn't check the background to this, but it looks like there was a discussion of the Rebbe about the minig of giving the children to scatter grain for the birds on Shabbos Shiroh, and the Rebbe says not to publish it, because evidently this minig has become totally obsolete, and the term which is saying in short, I think that's what he's referring to. So, what does it mean? Mitzvah. So what's he worried that you'll tell them, and then they start feeding the birds? Okay, it doesn't spell out. The point he says the minig is obsolete, and better not talk about it. But that's in Tofshim Mem Ches. Then we have in Sefer Sichos Tofshim Mem Tes, then where the Rebbe said the following: although the Frierdiker Rebbe told the story, we haven't seen that this should be the custom to do so. One of the reasons could be, as the Alter Rebbe says, that it's not correct because we don't have the responsibility to feed those birds. Because Paskin Magen Avraham, not like others. The Tosfos Shabbos says, since it's l'shem mitzvah, therefore one doesn't have to worry about it. So we keep to what's written in Shulchan Aruch. The main point, which is the Rebbe said apparently then, is it's not common that we should have our own chickens. In other words, we don't have our own domestic birds, which we have to feed. So when the Maharal told the children to feed the chickens, well, then it looks like it was very common for people to have their own chickens. And so the likelihood is that as they came to the Shulhof, perhaps there were chickens there, or the children had their own homes. So they fed the chickens, which was Mezuzah Sehem Alehem. But but for us, which we don't have, so we don't follow this minig of feeding the birds on Shabbos. Now, I have heard of people saying, well, put out before Shabbos. And I must say that as I walked through the streets this morning, I noticed on some walls of the front of the houses, I noticed crumbs, and probably it was got to do with this. But I couldn't find that in a reliable source, so I didn't copy it. Okay. Now here we have one thing leading to another, like quite a funny situation. One of our regular listeners owns a cat. Possibly they've got mice, so they need to have a cat to keep the mice in control. Well, the cat is a psashtikal lamden. Every time the balabos goes to the fridge to take out a shikol snack, the cat is there. The cat has apparently understood that there's a din of feeding the animals before the humans, and therefore every time he has a invited dog. So here he asks, is the cat right that every time I have a snack I have to give the cat first, or is it only when I have a proper meal? That's the be'erech the question. So it's funny, but it's a serious child. So the first thing which we have over here is from the Sefer Charedim. Sefer Charedim was written by a contemporary of the Arizal. How did I get to the Sefer Charedim? Because the halacha, which is about feeding animals before yourself, is in Hilchas, is Hilchas Suda, etc. The Siman Kuf Samach Zayin, and on the margin of the Shulchan Aruch, you've got the Bar Heitev and you've got the Sharet Shuva, and they refer to this Sefer Charedim. So here we have. He quotes from the Gemara Brachos, "Os sheyitam koidem machol, you should eat a machal behemto. One should not taste food before giving food to your animal." And you have the postuk, "V'nosati esim v'sot chalevemtecho v'ochalta v'savot." That's what the Gemara says. And certainly one must not cause pain to animals directly. And then he says the following: "Amasa hoyo b'doyreinu." We have a contemporary Maisa, Harav HaMekubal HaGodel Rebbes Answer, otherwise known to us as the Arizal. And at one stage, the Arizal looked at a particular Talmud of his, and he said to his Talmud, "I see a mark on your face that you are guilty of Tzar Baalei Chaim." So this Talmud was upset. He didn't know what he's done to bother the animals. Then he came home and he realized that his wife would not feed the chickens on a regular basis in the morning. Instead, she'd let them go and feed in the street. So then the husband said to the wife, encouraged her to prepare a bird feed from a bran, whatever, with water every morning. And once this has been put in place, he had not told the Arizal what he'd done, but some short time afterwards, it looks like, the Arizal looked at him and he says, "Sor avoincha, your sin is no longer there." So this is a story with Arizal, and they quote this in the poskim. They bring this story. After this, the Talmud told the Arizal what happened. Now he adds that this mitzvah of giving, now here's the important point, is this a mitzvah d'oraisa? This idea of giving your animals before yourself, is that a mitzvah d'oraisa? This is a branch of the overall mitzvah of emulating Hashem's compassionate ways. Just like the Eibishter is merciful, you should be merciful, and it says the Eibishter v'rachem avol kol ma'aso. So it's obviously an union of rachmanus, of care and compassion to the animal. Not that you should be eating and they are never starving. Right. So that's the one source. That's source of the Charedim. Here we have something very interesting. This halacha about feeding the animal first comes up in two places, one in Gemara Brachos, one in Gemara Gittin. In Gemara Brachos it says, "Also le'odam sheyochal koidem machal sheyitin machal behemte." You mustn't eat. In the Gemara Gittin, Omar Rav Yehuda, Omar Rav, also le'odam, it's the same person, also le'odam sheyit oim klum. So we have a change in the wording between also le'chol and also litoim. If you notice, the Charedim had said also she'oso litoim, and numerous Rishonim bring the term also litoim. Here, however, the Alter Rebbe says, shelefish also le'chol koidem sheyitin levehemtoi. Not allowed to eat before you feed your animal. He's taking the Maharal of the posuk of the. After all, it's based upon a posuk of v'nosati esav v'sod chalevemtecha, and then v'ochalta v'savot. It's got to do with achila. What's the difference between te'ima and achila? So a snack up till the shiur of a kabeya is considered a te'ima. That's why you can eat it outside the sukkah. Achila means a more settled type of achila, and that's from a kabeya v'oido and onwards. So one could take the view that the Alter Rebbe says it's got to do with achila, not with te'ima. In addition, the Rebbe Yankiv Emden takes the view that this mitzvah, this halacha doesn't apply to cats because they are quite capable of running around and feeding themselves on the street, and therefore you don't have to feel such a responsibility to feed your cat. So if one wants to find a smach lekula, there are these two bases. On the other hand, there's a famous story of a chassid who used to always walk to Lubavitch. Whenever he went to the Rebbe, he walked. Even as he got older, and there was an opportunity, and people offered him a ride on the wagon, and he says no. He's worried he'll come to Elam Ha'emes, and they'll come there, about the fact he went to the cheshbon for the merit of going to the Rebbe. And then the horse will also say, wait a minute, I also have a chelik, and you're going to the Rebbe. I was part of the merit of your going to the Rebbe. Of course, I will be able to defend myself and say it's nothing to do with the horse. I don't want to go to a din Torah with a horse. I want to avoid having a din Torah with a horse. So it may be worth just putting a bit more food earlier on in the day, and unless you're worried that your cat is getting overfed and it's not healthy for the cat, and it's possible out of Rahmanas you're not giving them extra food. And under Zach, but then you have a heterim, but yeah. Right. Let's move on. So the next thing I wanted to address is about shechianu on fruit, and that is obviously to do with the inyan of Chamisha Osa B'Shvat, which is on Monday, Rosh Hashanah Le'ilon. Le'ilon or Le'ilonos, there's a note of the Rebbe that they seem to become Rosh Hashanah Le'ilonos, although the Lashon of the Mishnah is Rosh Hashanah Le'ilon. The Rebbe talks about it. I think it's correspondence with his father. But meanwhile, I think it's worth just spending a couple of minutes explaining in simple terms, what does it mean, Rosh Hashanah Le'ilon? What does it mean? So there is in halacha, it's significant to establish which year a fruit belongs to. So, for example, in Maaser, so you've got Maaser Rishon, which is given to the Levi, but then there's the second Maaser. So there's 6 years of harvest. So you've got, then the 7th year Shemitah. There's a 6 year of harvest. So year 1, 2, 4, and 5, the second Maaser is Maaser Sheni taken to Yerushalayim. Years 3 and 6, it's going to go to the Maaser Oni is given to the poor. So we need to know whether it belongs, this fruit belongs to this year or that year. And whatever blossomed before Chamisha Osa B'Shvat belongs to the preceding year. Whatever blossomed after Chamisha Osa B'Shvat belongs to the coming year. Similar with Orla, it's much more complicated, but about the working out of the first 3 years of a fruit tree. So also there you have a significance of this. This becomes the date of the end of the 3rd year of the other fruit. What is more interesting, though, perhaps, what is this? Why dafka this date? What's the 15th of Shvat? What's got to do with it? So the Lashon of the Gemara, which is quoted, I think here, is Sheyahoyel ve'yotzi Rosh Hashanah Daf Yudal, I think it is. Hoyel ve'yotzu roiv gishmei shana ve'olah hasraf be'ilonis ve'nimsu ha'peiris chointim me'ato. Okay, why I'd like to explain. I may not be able to show it very clearly where I got this from. We've discussed it, not perhaps a few months ago. There's a difference between vegetables and trees. Vegetables have got short roots. Trees have got deeper roots. And therefore, the fortunes of your tomatoes or your lettuce is very much on the current rain. By contrast, the fortunes of your fruit tree, because they've got deeper roots, they can draw on reserves of water from months before, and because they're deep in the ground and they can still draw on those reserves. So you've got the annual rainfall. The main annual rainfall is from Cheshvan time till about Pesach time. By Tu B'Shvat, we've gone past the midpoint. We've got most of the rain of that year has already come. As a result, until then, we could say, oh, this fruit, it's still relying on last year's. It's not necessarily identified with this year because it's still relying on last year's resources. Anything after Chamisha Osa B'Shvat is then attributed to the resources, as in the rainfall of this year, because most of the rain is now here. So therefore, that's the switch over. It's got to do with the majority of the rainfall expected for that year is by now here. So therefore, it's a fruit of this year, not of last year. I once had I think I've told this before, but never mind. I was once Friday night, and I've told this about the avocados. In the middle of the Chodoidi, I realized that I'd taken mice of the avocados, and they were Israeli avocados, and I'd taken mice before Shabbos. And in my wisdom at the time, I thought that it's the Yoshana Shlishis, and there's no need for mice Sheni, which is the whole thing with the coin and all that. Then in the middle of the Chodoidi, I realized, wait a minute, the avocado, it might be now Yoshana Shlishis, but those avocados started growing last year, and therefore they are subject to Masa Sheni. We didn't do Masa Sheni. We can't eat it. I came home, they were already mixed into eggs. Whatever, they were put aside till after Shabbos. Right. So that's the story here of the Chamishas. One last point. We all understand that we're talking here about rain as the cycle of the seasons. The cycle of the seasons is not dependent on the lunar cycle. It depends on the solar cycle. That's the Dover HaPoshet. So how do you have a date on in our calendar, which is a lunar calendar? Obviously, it's not a mechuven mamash, it's approximate. And we see that there's a difference between Beth Shammai and Beth Hillel. So to speak, they chose round figures. Beth Shammai chose the Rosh Chodesh, whatever the reason they chose, but that's a significant point in the calendar is a Rosh Chodesh, and similarly, the full moon is also a significant point, and that's why Beth Hillel chose Tesvov B'Sivan, although, of course, it may not be reflected exactly the solar cycle, the seasons. That's not a problem. Okay. Let's move on. So now we have the more practical question, Shechionu. So let's read the first. Here, this is from the Alter Rebbe's Seder Birchas Hanenin. Haroye pri chodosh shemischadesh l'shana l'shana. If you see a new fruit, which is it's an annual, is renewed annually, or it could be I'm going to get this wrong, biannual. At any rate, it's a fruit which happens twice a year. So that also warrants a shechionu, and you are excited to see it. So then really you should say the bracha shechionu when you see it. And even when you see the new fruit on the tree or in someone else's hand, if you're not so excited when seeing it, then you make the bracha when you eat it. Lepoil, this is, I think later he mentions that the minhag has become that we make shechionu only when we eat the new fruit. Fine. But what is important is that it has to be mischadesh mishana l'shana. It has to be a fruit which is kind of dated. I didn't mean the pun. It was. You look at it. Oh, it must be that we've come to a certain stage in the year. Now this fruit is available, and that really has raised a problem for all these exotic fruit. I wouldn't know the difference. When you show me this unusual fruit, I don't know whether it's last year. I mean, it's not a seasonal thing, as far as I know. It's only whenever you're ready to pay another a premium amount of money for a little fruit. So that doesn't make it into a shechianu. I mean, this you have in front of you, the Piskei Teshuvos. Here's Eretz Yisrael. It's a little bit easier. Things which are growing in, let's say, he says, which will grow in the greenhouses, they are available the whole year. Bananas are available the whole year, so you don't make a shechianu on banana. Apples are available the whole year. Pears, he says, tamarim available. Nuts. Then he says, this is interesting. He says that oranges, although they're available the whole year, but you can recognize the difference between the fresh ones and the old ones. Okay, I mean, if you're living in Eretz Yisrael, you probably know that difference where you don't have, I mean, I wouldn't know the difference. So I wouldn't say a shechianu on an orange, but in Eretz Yisrael, they are more sensitive to this. So what do you have? He says you have grapes, peaches, plums, etc. But really, it depends very much. Is this something which is out of season and now has become available? Then you can make a shechianu. If it's something which is for available the whole year round, then you could not make a shechianu. Certainly on dried fruit, there's no point of saying there'd be a bracha al to say shechianu because there's no evidence of it being a new fruit. He mentions here guava, dovdevanim is cherries, means fresh cherries, fresh figs, pomegranate, blackberries. I think that's what he means. Or blueberries, and watermelon or melon. I guess in Eretz Yisrael, these things are sometimes available, sometimes not. And he mentions also about pineapple, kiwi. But really, it's very much. You have to make your own decision. Has this been available throughout the year? Then it doesn't warrant a shechianu. If it has been available, if it has been available the whole year, then it doesn't warrant a shechianu. If it hasn't been and now it's become available, then you can make a shechianu. Right. One last thing. We used to get this star fruit. Now, when I was in Brazil about 8 years ago, apparently the star fruit there were gishmak. Star fruit here, they are, I don't know about you, but I didn't find them appealing at all. After pouring a few layers of sugar, perhaps it becomes edible. Oh, I'm saying this, besides saying that I'm the youngest in the family, and I'm a Zinnik, but the point which I wanted to say is that a shechianu has to be an enjoyable fruit. If it's something which is an ordeal to eat, that does not justify saying shechianu. Shechianu is obviously a statement of simcha, and so it's exciting. But if it's not exciting, then it doesn't warrant shechianu. Okay, go on to new question. This I got a question from someone at Yisrael who works in editing, and he's looking at this chart at the back of the Siddur, which is, as mentioned a few times, the Siddur Tilas Hashem was published by Merkaz L'Inyanei Chinuch. If you remember, many of the Siddurim have the numbers for the lines, because just as it's to help with your teachers, it's this line, that line. And so it's very much a chinuch orientated Siddur. So they have this chart at the back of the word is hierarchy, but how Torah is handed down from Har Sinai, and then you've got Tanakh, and then we have the Zohar. He brings it there. Zohar, Midrashim, Shisha Sidrei Mishnah, and then Braisa and Tosefta. So he was asking, his impression was that Tosefta precedes the Braisa, and here the chart has Braisa before Tosefta. Now, as I'm looking a bit more carefully, I can see that in the chart they have the Braisa earlier on. You can have here the Mechilta, and then you've got the Sifra, was put together by Rav, and Sifri, and that's Yiddish, in the correct term would be Sha'or Sifrei Devei Rav. the other two. You've got Sifra Devei Rav and the Shiur Sifrei Devei Rav. So Sifra and Sifri. They are also known as Brisa, and so they've put them earlier on. So on the left here of our sheet, we have from the back of the Gemara, we've got like this guidance for the rules of Gemara, etc. And he tells us the definition that Tosefta is the overflow of the Mishnah. And when you learn in Gemara, it has the word tono, that would be a code that this is a Tosefta. A Tosefta means addendum. And he says generally that would be the halacha like a Tosefta. The Brisa is from Sforim which were put together after the Mishnah, Chiur, Oishia, etc. So it looks like he's got a valid taina. My understanding, though, is that the Brisa are records of halachas taught in Botei Midrashim, in yeshivas, throughout the period of the Mishnah. And then later they were compiled and edited. So we've got the Brisa called the Mechilta, we've got the Brisa called the Sifra, but the actual material is from earlier on. And so we've got the Brisa is an earlier body of knowledge, body of information, and then it's compiled into, some of it is compiled into Mezuzah Sforim, and that is probably right, that those are later than the Tosefta, which is written by Reb Chia. Reb Chia was a Talmud of Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, Rabbeinu HaKodesh, and he saw the need to kind of supply the Talmidim with parallel texts to the Mishnah to clarify and to make it a little bit more text to explain things. So it looks like the actual material of the Brisa is from earlier on, although possibly the actual formal Brisa is actually later than the Tosefta. Let's look at the chat. Rabbi Safrin is asking, if the fruit is available only, what about if there was, if he was there when it was itself? Can you make it? No. So it has to be that this fruit was not available. It doesn't matter whether you've eaten. Let's say if I haven't eaten potatoes for 6 months and now I eat a potato, I cannot say shechionu, because the fruit itself is not a dated fruit. The shechionu fruit has to be something we saw before the Lashon. It has to be a fruit which wasn't available, was out of season, and then becomes available. So it's really, it actually has to be the cheftza. The fruit has to be something which has been away and now become available. Yeah, I'm wondering, when I went to Brazil and I ate some of these fruit which I've never seen before, does that warrant a shechionu? For me, I had never seen this fruit, but it wasn't, on the basis of pre-chodosh. It wasn't pre-chodosh because it's available the whole year round. So I'm not sure about that. Let's move on. So one of our listeners asked me the question, and we'll put it next to the Brisa story. Why do we say Rabbi Shmuel every morning after Ezel Mekoyim before Hoidu? After all, Mele Ezel Mekoyim, you could say it's about karbonos. Karbonos got to do with davening. But then you got these 13 policies of how you extrapolate the Torah. Yeah, that's very interesting. But what's that got to do with davening? That's a good question. When I was about bar mitzvah, Rabbi Sudak Alav Shalom encouraged us to buy the Sefer Abu Darham. Abu Darham is perhaps the classic Sefer Biur Tefillah from the Rishonim. I must respect it's for him. Date about 700 years ago, possibly 650 years ago. At any rate, so he goes through the 13 midas of Rabbi Shmuel, and it gives examples to explain how each one would work. But that doesn't answer the question, well, how does this come into the davening? So what you have here is a quote from Seder Rav Amram Goen. Rav Amram Goen is from around 1100 years ago, a bit more, from the period of towards the end of the Goenim, I believe. And he is the compiler of the earliest Siddur, which we know of, as far as I know. The Seder shekozavnu, likroi b'tzav, the Seder which I've shown you to read the Mikra, as in Savas Bnei Yisrael was Kobani Lachmi, Kobani Parshas Atomit. The Lishnois Be'ezer Mekoimon, to revise the Mishnah of Ezer Mekoimon. The Lidrosh Rabbi Shmuel, and to extrapolate with the words of Rabbi Shmuel. Kach Motzu Beshalch Shuras. This is, we have a tradition from in response of earlier Goinim, and that is indeed Minikol Yisrael Ba'aspamyo. Aspamyo, I believe, is Spain. This is the minig of all Yidden Aspamyo. V'rayo minayin. Where does it come from? What's the proof? The Yomer of Safra B'Shumer B'Shober Chananya says in the Gemara, Maidich siv v'shinantom altini. The word shinantom altikre v'shinantom ela v'shilashtom. Read it as if it should say you should do in triple form. Le'olam yashlish odom shnoisov. A person should divide his years. Shlish b'mikra, a third of his years he should devote to studying Tanakh. Shlish b'mikshna, a third he should devote to studying Halocha. Shlish b'talmud, and a third to devote to the extrapolation and the development of Halocha. And Bakshinon, then the Gemara asks, Miyoda Shanyo Kamacha, you don't know how long you're going to live. How can you start making this budget? There is an idea of each day dividing your learning into Mikra, Mishnah, and Talmud, and that's what we're doing every morning. We're saying the Korbanos, which is Mikra, and we're saying Ezer Mekom, which is Mishnah, and Rabbi Shmuel is like the beginning of, so to speak, the giving you the rules, at least, of Talmud. Of course, there's deeper reasons on Pi Arizal. There's a parallel drawn between Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim and Yud Gimel Midas Shator Nidreshes Bohen. In Chazal, it's talked about this correlation, but that's another discussion. Someone is asking, Rabbi Naftali is asking, does the term Braisa means a statement of the Chachamim which was left outside the Mishnah? Probably that's correct. The word Braisa means outside, so it wasn't incorporated the Mishnah, so it remained outside. Yes, probably. Let's move on. Okay. Let's move on. Right. So this question is probably to do with the fact that we're going to the Pkinos Hashluchos, and there may be women who are Baruch Hashem pregnant, and they're going to be in New York, and they would like to go to the upheld. And there is something about a pregnant woman not going to a Beis Olam, so hence the question. Actually, this whole business of women not going to a Beis Olam, to a cemetery during pregnancy, has not got a very strong, it's not very well documented. There's a sefer which I've quoted before called Shmiras Haguf V'Hanefesh, and he says possibly it's based upon this lotion of the sefer Shevet Musar. I'll confess that I don't look at the Shevet Musar very often. I don't have the sefer, so I looked at it. Actually, I found it very beautiful sefer, and there is a Perik Chof Daled, which is all about Noshim, and I saw actually a remarkable statement where he says that when a woman does her avodah, although she doesn't have mitzvah shashas man groma, etc., but there's no difference in madrega, in ruchnius, between a man and a woman. If you do your right thing, it's exactly the same, which is a refreshing thing to read. But meanwhile, he has later on in that chapter, it's quite a long chapter, so he has about during pregnancy. Gamti and Izheres, bifrod bimei imburo. A woman should be particularly careful when she is pregnant, not to enter places of tumah and places where there's a reach ra, where there's a bad smell, because the child is formed according to her experiences. And he brings a whole story, which I don't want to read over. And towards the end, where I've highlighted again, rather teshiv b'mei iburo, she should spend her time during the months of pregnancy in places of purity and holiness, like shuls, etc. And also to look at Talmidei Chachomim, Hasidim, V'Anshe Maaseh, hear Divrei Torah. So all of these things are encouraged. So to go to a regular cemetery, that's the Minhag Yisrael, and we understand it's a mokim of tumah. Although there are neshamas there, but there's a tumas mace, which is an extreme tumah, the most extreme tumah. Now I have a sefer called Minhagim v'Hanhagos L'Chassidei Chabad. Here we are. I know it's back to front. What can I do? But so he quotes from Rav Ashkenazi Zichron Livrocha, also that a woman should avoid going to Kivrei Tzadikim. Having said that, I don't know what the minhag is in New York, but possibly he is talking about Kivrei Tzadikim in Eretz Yisrael, where many times, like you go to the Arizal, you have to pass through many Kvorim, etc. Since last time I was there, so you are exposing yourself to other Kvorim also. Here by the Rebbe, the arrangements have been made to the point that a Kohen could go through and is considered separated from the Tumah of the Kvorim. And so I think that would be adequate for a woman to be able to go to the Ohel. Again, I don't know what the minhag is in New York, but for a woman who's made the effort to come from overseas, for sure one should be mekel. And there's a general attitude, which we've seen from the Rebbe, that when it's otherwise going to be a whole tsar, a whole upset if they cannot go, one should certainly take the lenient view. And then you have the positive side. What does it say here? He should spend time about the Knesiyos, about the Midrashes, relating to Talmidei Chachomim. So spending time at the Ohel, obviously in a tzniusdik way, but it's a exposure to a very powerful kedusha. And I think one could go along with that. Fine, let's move on. Thank you. Someone writes the following. When I was in New York with my wife, I asked Rabbi Klein if my wife could go to the Ohel. He said yes. And to double check, I asked him if he would allow his daughter to go, and he said yes. Okay, very good. Thank you for that. All right. You just reminded me. We had someone asked why do I have only 8 questions. So actually, my apology is that on Thursday night where I usually put together the shiur, we had a shiur on kashrus for shluchos, and the main presenter was Rabbi Pink, but I was also involved. And talking about when sometimes people ask, would you yourself eat it? And I said, although it's none of your business what I eat, but actually I appreciate that, because when a shlucha asks me, would you yourself rely on that? She's saying that, and I agree, we're just as frum, we're just as chiddush, and therefore there's no difference. If it's something which is, you don't bend the rules for me. I want to be just as frum as you. That's basically what they're saying. I want to just share with you, though I know there are shluchos who are listening now, and some will listen later. There was a point raised that Rabbi Pink said in the name of Rav Landau that the fruit juices produced in Europe, one should be able to use them without hesitation. Obviously not if it has grape juice, but overall the fruit juices are made from concentrate, etc. Whereas if they're made under hashgacha, he was more concerned because then there might be an issue of ein mevatel and nisel lechatchila. So that was what Rabbi Pink told over the name of Beshalch Shalom. So one of the people asked in the question, what about the equipment? Because we know that there's a problem of steam used for cooking, etc. And if the same steam is circulated from one part of the plant to another, so then that's contaminating. If there's a trefa part of the factory and a kosher part, and the same steam is circulated, that creates a problem. So if the same factory is used for milk and for fruit juice, then you have a problem with the steam. with this circulating steam? That was the question which was asked, and no answer was given on Thursday evening. So I want to give the answer. I asked Rabbi Yosef Landau, and he said that the prevalence of fruit juice plants also producing milk is prevalent in America. It's not prevalent in Europe. And therefore, one needn't worry about it. That was his answer. Chaim Azimov is writing. There's a famous lashon of someone asked the Rebbe about going Chalamoyed to the oil, and he says, if you're going to Beis HaChaim, then you shouldn't be going Chalamoyed. If you're going to the Rebbe, then you don't have to worry about it. Okay, yes. So I think we're on the same page. Fine. Let's go. What else do we have here? Right. This, what you have in front of you, is a fragment of a Sefer Torah, which you can see the inscription on the side, which is at the bottom of the frame. This fragment of Torah scroll was found in the great choral synagogue, survived the siege of Leningrad, 1941 to 1944, which unfortunately I have a special connection to because my late mother's parents and her brother and sister perished in that siege. So this is a frame. They found this urea. Actually, the urea, this sheet of the Sefer Torah looks fairly good condition, but it was put on display in some Jewish center. That Jewish center, for some reason, is no longer operational, and they've given this fragment, this frame, to the local Chabad shliach, and the shliach is asking a question: am I allowed to leave it on display, or do I have to put it in Giza? Do I have to wrap it up and put it in shemus? And we discussed last week that the shemus would have to be a much more durable container. You can't just put it in a regular plastic bag. It would have to be in a durable plastic container that it shouldn't be damaged by moisture, etc. So when I saw this question, it triggered in my memory that there's indeed a discussion about this in Igris Moshe, which eventually I managed to trace. And so this is a letter of Reb Moshe Feinstein, it's Chelik Dalet in Aver Chaim, Simon Lamed Ches, is writing to his son-in-law about a Sefer Torah, which part of it, I guess it's a similar thing, which a fragment which is on display. And he has a fascinating discussion. Is there a chiyuv to bury it in the ground? Or if it's kept in a respectable position, is that also adequate? And he takes the view, first of all, that if it is kept in a respectable position, then there's no chiyuv of geniza. The whole geniza is because you don't want it to be disgraced. But if you're keeping it in a respectable place, that's okay. So having this sheet on display is not disrespect. Then he asks a very interesting question. Okay, and this is actually even a psychology. Is showing that you are a victim, is that a disrespect to yourself? Interesting question. So now you got here this fragment of a Sefer Torah, and people will look at it and they'll see how the Nazis in Machshemon disgraced it. Is that considered respectful, or should it be actually suppressed? Should it not be shown? That's the question which he makes. That's a fascinating question. And he says we shouldn't be inventing our own definitions of bizarre, first of all. But then he brings a shtickle raya. We have in Maseches Midos, there was a large chamber called Beis HaMoiked. And of this large chamber, Beis HaMoiked, there are 4 small chambers in each corner, one in each corner. And it says the northeastern one was where the Hashmonai people took the stones of the Mizbeach, the altar, which had been defiled by the Malcha Yovan, by the Greek, Syrian oppressors. That Mizbeach had to be taken apart. So, and they built a new Mizbeach that used it possibly for Avodah Zarah. I'm not sure exactly what the history is, but they had defiled that Mizbeach, so they had to remove that Mizbeach, which is made of stones, and they built a new Mizbeach. So what did they do with the old stones? They had this room where they concealed those stones. And so Reb Moshe suggests that they didn't conceal them, that they should be out of view. On the contrary, they actually put them there out of the way, but it was actually that people should see these stones and they should remember the atrocities of the Yevonim and to be thankful to Hashem who saved us from them. And Baruch Hashem, we know, is such a much better position today. And so that's his view that it's showing that there has been victimization of Yidden is actually not a disgrace for Yidden at all. And therefore he feels that it's okay to keep it on display. It's just a fascinating insight. Towards the end, he writes that apparently the Goyish priest who had salvaged this scroll, he wrote some kind of provenance on the scroll which Moshe is talking about, and he writes there that heaven and earth fell apart, so to speak, and God's word prevails. So that's what the Goyish priest wrote there. That was his kind of assessment. It was such a Holocaust, and yet the word of Hashem prevailed. So Moshe says, my impression is he did not mean Yoshki. He meant Hashem. And so he felt that we can leave that as it is. So that's the thing for Rebbes. Finally, we've got a couple of minutes coming back to the Mezuzah situation, which we discussed last week. And now we've got a bit of a clearer picture. If you remember last week, the impression was that the middle panel doesn't move. That was misunderstood. Actually, the middle panel also moves. As you can see, these two doors open inwards. So it's basically what you have here is a double door opening and a single door opening. Now, then I mentioned last week that if the post, I mentioned that the Aruch HaShulchan says if the post between the doorways is less than a tefach, then it's okay. Then you don't have to have an extra mezuzah. So the shliach measured this, and it's just on the margin. Is it a tefach or not a tefach? 8.5 centimeters, eight somewhere around there. So I responded, listen, the Shulchan Aruch says that if there's a separation of hinges, which there is over here, as you can see, there's a separate hinge here, that makes it a separate person. Aruch HaShulchan came up with a chiddush that if it's less than a tefach, you can ignore it. I'm not even sure whether it's less than a tefach. It might be a tefach. On those grounds, I said, listen, put up a second mezuzah. And so, so this is on the outside, and this is on the inside. So there we are. I think so, yeah. So there we have the double door. No, that's the single door, and that's the double door. Yeah. So you need to have one mezuzah l'chayra. Let's look on the outside. The mezuzah, since the doors swing inwards, so the mezuzah should be on the right as you go in. So therefore, it should be one mezuzah over here and one mezuzah on this panel over here. Now, it is preferable to place the mezuzah in what we call within the Chalal HaPesach, within the door frame. But it may be that it's going to be awkward to fit onto that. This panel which I'm pointing to, this door post, is probably just about 1 centimeter or less in depth. It's going to be a bit difficult to fit a mezuzah there. And so in the absence of that possibility, then you can put a mezuzah on the front of this panel, and that will serve the purpose. Here you can put it on the side, and if possible within the Chalal HaPesach, although you could say the whole thing has got a Tzuras HaPesach. Okay, that's it for this evening, for this Motzei Shabbos. This coming week, I am planning to go to New York I haven't been by the Rebbes Dal Damas for the last 2 years, so I'm looking forward to going there. And so I hope to be able to prepare a shiur. It depends when the shilas come in. If they don't come in, I get nothing to say. But if shilas do come in and I manage to put something together, so I'll, as Hashem, provide you a link in time before Shabbos. And meanwhile, I wish you all a healthy week and gesund and nachas alle gute Sachen.
Thank you and forgive me.
Thank you.